Oh, yeah, we do. And how much for her? How much should he pay for you? Recording Glory Days?
The film opens in a special bar known as a drop bar. On the surface, it looks like a normal bar, but in reality, it serves as a safe place where gangs launder money. Cash constantly flows in and out, handled by secret couriers who deliver it to the final destination. For security reasons, the bar owners never know when their place will be chosen to operate as a drop site. In one such bar, the audience meets the main character, a bartender named Bob Saganowski. He is a reserved man with a dark past and a violent nature hidden beneath his gentle appearance. The bar where he works is managed by his cousin Marv, but is actually owned by the Chechen Mafia. There, a group of older regulars often gather to drink and talk. As they raise their glasses in memory of Richie Whalen, a friend who mysteriously died 10 years earlier, Bob offers them another round. Marv reprimanded Bob, stressing that they were running a business, not a charity. His anger grew when he discovered that Bob had allowed an elderly woman to drink for free and smoke illegally inside the bar while he was away. Although Bob believed he was only being kind, he ultimately followed Marv's advice. The audience also learns that Bob is a devout Catholic who regularly attends church. One evening on his way home, he heard distressed cries coming from a neighbor's trash bin. When he checked, he found a severely injured pit bull left to die. At that moment, the homeowner, Nadia, stepped outside, curious about the stranger poking around her property. Bob explained the situation and asked Nadia to help the injured dog. Still cautious, she demanded his identification and even photographed the dog to send to her friends for safety. In the end, they brought the dog inside to treat its wounds. It had several cuts and bruises showing signs of brutal abuse, but fortunately the injuries were not too serious. During their conversation, Bob noticed bruises on Nadia's neck. She worked as a waitress and had experience with animal rescue. They agreed that a shelter might not be the best place for the dog, especially since Bob had already grown attached to it. He persuaded Nadia to care for the dog temporarily until he could take it back in 2 days. Near the bar, two brothers spoke in tension. They planned to rob Marv's bar. The older brother was confident, believing they needed to prove they could handle dangerous situations to their boss. The younger brother, a drug addict, was terrified when he learned the bar was actually controlled by the Chechen Mafia. In the end, the older brother convinced him. The scene shifts to the bar, where two masked robbers strike just before closing time. They point their guns and force Marv to stuff money into a bag. Although he stayed calm and warned them they were targeting the wrong people, Marv had no choice but to comply. During the robbery, Bob noticed that one of the robbers was wearing a broken watch. After it ended, they discovered the bar employee, Randy, beaten to death in the backyard. Soon after, Detective Torres arrived to investigate. He recognized Bob, as they had attended the same church for years, even though they had never spoken. During the investigation, Bob had little to offer since the robbers were masked. However, he mentioned a broken watch that had stopped at 6:15. The stolen amount was reported to be about $5,000. Beyond the crime, Detective Torres was curious why Bob always avoided taking communion at church, something Bob initially denied. When Torres pressed further, Bob denied it. In truth, he was ashamed of his dark past and avoided communion to escape confession. Meanwhile, Marv grew angry when he learned Bob had mentioned the broken watch during the investigation, fearing it would provoke the Chechens. Later, Bob brought the puppy home and asked Nadia to join him at the pet store, since he had never owned a dog. Nadia picked out bowls, a leash, waste bags, and a care manual. Bob suggested naming the dog Rocco, though he preferred the name Mike. Nadia favored Rocco, believing Mike was a poor name for a dog. They made a name tag for Rocco, though Bob still thought Mike sounded better. The next morning at church, he was astonished to see a statue of St. Rocco accompanied by a dog. After shopping, Bob drove Nadia home, unaware that a thug named Eric Deeds was secretly watching them from a distance. One morning, while the cousins were shoveling snow in the backyard, Shavka, the Chechen Mafia boss and owner of the bar, arrived. He revealed that he had captured one of the robbers. The man had been brutally tortured, gagged, and had his foot pierced and bolted to the floor of a van. Shavka asked Marv and Bob if they recognized the man, but both denied it. He also questioned how the police knew about the broken watch, forcing Bob to apologize. Before leaving, Chavka threatened Marv to recover the stolen money. Marv felt pressured, as if Chavka believed he knew how to get it back, implying his involvement in the robbery. During the investigation, Detective Torres discovered that Marv had lost the bar to Papa Umarov, a Chechen mafia boss and Chavka's father 10 years earlier. He discussed this with a colleague from a major crime unit, questioning whether they intended to take down Papa. The colleague replied that the group was too powerful to topple and jokingly added that Torres was free to prosecute them himself if he wished. Bob enjoyed having Rocco as a companion. But as a first-time dog owner, he struggled with the mess when Rocco kept urinating around the house, forcing constant cleanup. One morning at the dog park, while Bob was playing with Rocco, Nadia happened to be exercising nearby. Having lost her night shift job, she offered to take care of Rocco for extra income. Drawn to Nadia, Bob accepted her offer, and they exchanged contact information. After they parted, Eric Deeds appeared and complimented Bob's dog. Suspicious of his appearance, Bob quickly walked away with Rocco. Meanwhile, Marv lived with his sister Dottie while their father remained in a nursing home, brain dead and kept alive by machines. The siblings discussed their father's condition. Exhausted by the high cost of care, Dottie suggested ending his life so they could enjoy their own, like traveling to Europe. Marv strongly objected, believing they should remain devoted to their father, even if it meant sacrificing their own comfort. Marv met Fitz, one of the robbers, and brought up his role in the crime. He blamed Fitz for his brother's stupidity with the broken watch and for beating Randy so badly that Marv had to call an ambulance and involve the police. Marv warned that their bar would soon end up abandoned and advised Fitz to handle the next robbery more cleanly. Elsewhere, a suspicious stranger driving a car asked Marv for directions to the hospital. Marv gave the answer but stayed wary of him. Meanwhile, at Bob's house, he spoke to Rocco and apologized for not taking him out. A knock at the door revealed Eric, who rudely let himself inside. He asked about the dog, leaving Bob confused. Eric claimed it was his, but Bob disagreed. Eric said that if Bob truly owned the dog, he should have the security chip number and legal papers. He explained that the chip was a device implanted in the dog's body to identify its owner. Eric produced the chip's serial number, implying he was the legal owner. Bob insisted Rocco was his, pointing out that Eric had abused the dog. Eric then threatened to call the police. When Bob asked what he wanted, Eric gave only vague threats, mentioning the unpredictable weather before taking Bob's umbrella and walking away. Bob and Nadia grew closer through Rocco. During a conversation at a cafe, Nadia admitted he was the first person who never asked about the bruises on her neck. Bob believed it was her private matter and not his place to judge. In the end, Nadia still revealed her troubled past. During a drug high, Nadia once cut her own throat with a potato peeler, hating her addiction and wanting to end her life. Miraculously, she survived and began living a more normal and meaningful life. Meanwhile, at the bar, Marv expressed his fear to Bob about the strange man who had asked for directions, worried that his life might be in danger. Marv was still tormented by losing the bar to Chavka Umarov nearly 10 years ago. His deep self-hatred haunted him and shaped his life. One day, Bob was shocked to find a severed hand and a blood-stained bill in a trash bag. The stolen money had been returned along with the robber's broken watch and the hand. They were confused, not knowing who had returned the money or why. Bob carried the severed hand into the bar and skillfully wrapped it, impressing Marv with a practiced ease, as if he had done it many times before. At that moment, Eric suddenly burst in because they had forgotten to lock the door. Marv tried to send Eric away, saying the bar was closed. When Bob was nearly caught, Eric simply greeted him and left, though still curious about them. Marv grew uneasy about the connection between Bob and Eric. When Bob explained that Eric claimed to own Rocco, Marv became even more worried. Eric was revealed to be a local thug rumored to have killed Richie Whalen, the man toasted at the beginning of the film. Marv told Bob that Eric had served prison time and been in a mental institution, warning him to stay away. Yet Bob seemed more surprised than afraid by the revelation. He placed the severed hand in a cloth bag and left. After Bob walked away, Marv broke down in tears and began wiping the blood off the money to hand over to the Chechens. Meanwhile, Bob played with Rocco and tossed the bandaged hand into the river. Detective Torres approached Bob, asking if he knew Eric Deeds, but Bob denied it. The Chechens later came to the bar to retrieve the stolen money. Shovka also announced that the bar would be used as a drop site on the night of the Super Bowl. Eric confronted Bob, asking about Nadia and whether she had recently hurt herself. Shortly after, Bob asked Nadia about her relationship with Eric. The investigation frightened Nadia, causing her to run away and leaving Bob confused. Meanwhile, Marv met Fitz, who asked to get into his car. Fitz was terrified, having lost his brother under similar circumstances. He checked Marv's trunk to make sure it wasn't lined with plastic and pulled out a pistol. When Marv opened the trunk, it was completely empty. Satisfied, Fitz got into the car and drove off. Marv suggested a robbery on Super Bowl night, when a large amount of cash would be at the bar, but Fitz refused, wanting only to survive. Marv told him to get out of the car and close the trunk. As Fitz nervously complied, Marv rammed into him repeatedly, killing him on the spot. Marv then left, switched cars, and drove away. In the next scene, Bob and Nadia reconciled, and she apologized for her earlier behavior. She admitted that she had once dated Eric. At first, he seemed kind, but eventually she realized how awful he truly was, leading to their breakup. Nadia warned Bob that Deeds was the one who killed Richie Whalen, something Bob already knew. Later, Marv met Deeds in a diner and told him that Bob was afraid of him. Eric replied that he wanted more respect from Bob or there would be trouble. Marv reassured him, saying he had a solution that would benefit everyone. In fact, Marv planned to involve Fitz in the Super Bowl heist instead of Eric, keeping Eric distracted so he wouldn't bother Bob. Detective Torres met an old colleague and obtained Eric's psychiatric file, where one detail caught his attention. At home, Bob called for Rocco but got no response. Bob found Rocco safe inside the wooden crate along with his umbrella, proof that Eric had been there. He confronted Eric, told him to back off, and insisted he would not give Rocco back. Eric demanded $10,000 for Bob to keep the dog, but Bob refused, saying it was too much. Later, Marv told Bob he would not be at the bar during the Super Bowl. Bob suspected that Marv was planning a reckless scheme they could never handle. Obsessed with the respect he once had before losing the bar to Shavka, Marv grew angry. He became paranoid, believing Bob gave his old stool to an old woman to humiliate him. Bob insisted it was just an ordinary stool with no meaning. At the bar, Bob hid $10,000, Rocco, and a pistol in the basement. Meanwhile, Eric broke into Nadia's home and forced her to go with him to Marv's bar. At first, she resisted but then complied to avoid provoking him. That night, they arrived at the bar together, leaving Bob disappointed and Nadia ashamed. Marv called Eric, but he was already at the bar because of the commotion. Marv warned not to underestimate Bob, who was quiet and polite but unpredictable. He then lined his trunk with plastic, drove to the bar, and parked 2 blocks away to watch the plan unfold. All night, various Mafia crews came to deliver money. At last, the bar was empty except for Eric and Nadia. Before stepping outside for a cigarette, Eric handed Nadia a gun. In tears, she warned Bob that Deeds planned to kill him. Bob offered to pay for Rocco, but Eric instead asked how much Nadia was worth to him and demanded the money be locked in the safe. Bob refused and revealed that he, not Eric, was the one who killed Richie Whalen. He explained that Marv had a severe gambling addiction, and Richie was just one of many debtors. When Richie won big at the casino and repaid Marv, the money was still not enough. To hide the fact that Marv had taken the payment, Bob shot Richie twice in the face.
Yes, you do.
As Eric reacted, Bob shot him twice in the face. He reassured Nadia that she was safe and could leave. The Chechens disposed of Eric's body, and Shavka handed the bar over to Bob, renaming it Bob's Bar. Marv was killed outside, and Detective Torres arrived to investigate. He mentioned the upcoming sale of the church and suspected Bob was behind Richie Whalen's murder and Eric's disappearance.
No one ever sees you coming, do they, Bob?
Bob brought Rocco to Nadia's house, apologized for his past actions, and explained that he had to kill Eric to prevent future extortion schemes. Nadia was both afraid and in love with Bob, and they agreed to go out together.